strength. Lord, we speak blessings upon Madam President and her family, upon our Governor General, our Prime Minister, our nation. Lord, we give you all the glory and all the praise. Father, we pray blessings upon our senators today. And Father, in particular, the International Day of the Girl Child, we speak blessings upon them. God, may they become the greatest potential that you would have them to be. We pray that you would cover them, protect them, guide them, keep them, and shield them from all harm and all danger. We bless you now in the name that is above every name. And everyone says, amen. You've taught us to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Eileen. Adoption of minutes.
Madam President, I beg leave to move that the minutes of the meeting of this honorable chamber on the 4th day of October 2018 be approved. If I may obtain a seconder.
I rise to second the minutes.
I third.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes be adopted as written. As many as are in favor would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes have been adopted. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign.
Nil.
Swearing in of new senators.
None.
Communications by the President. A good morning to everyone again. Let me first acknowledge our visitors in the gallery. I know we do have the Minister of Social Services who is on his way, as well as the Director of Gender Affairs should be here shortly. We also have the National Women's Advisory Council Chairperson, Coralie Adderley, teachers and students representing R.M. Bailey, A.F. Adderley, D.W. Davis, H.O. Nash, L.W. Young, Anatole Rogers, and S.C. McPherson schools. We welcome also the newly crowned Miss Bahamas, Bernice Gibson. Also in the House is Anthony Hamilton, representing the Organization for Responsible Government. And again, a very special welcome to the girls visiting the Senate chamber this morning. I'd like to acknowledge the committee members of the GirlCon organization in Freeport who are on location at 6 schools on Grand Bahama at this hour, tuned into the Senate proceedings. I'd like to acknowledge the girls at Bishop Michael Eldon, Lucayan International, Sunland Baptist, 8 Mile Rock, St. George's, and Sir Jack Haywood schools. In Long Island, Mrs. Patricia Minnis is marking the day with school visits to MGM Major and North Long Island High. The GirlCon organization, of which I am a proud member, operates on Grand Bahama Island, and we are currently preparing for our annual event scheduled for November 20th, so we thought today was a good day to launch our event. The one-day conference brings together some 300 high school girls. The event serves to inspire and motivate the next generation of female leaders through personal conversations with a group of panelists who bring frank discussions about success and failure and sharing of their life story. GirlCon is not just a single event. It is an organization and movement supporting the United Nations 17 Sustainable Goals and the 1.1 billion girls throughout the world, with particular emphasis on Bahamian women and girls. As an organization, we focus our efforts on goal number 5, gender equality, to achieve gender equality and to empower all women and girls. So this is a great day to kick off GirlCon 2018. Today is International Day of the Girl Child, a day celebrated annually on October 11th. First introduced in 2012 by the United Nations General Assembly. This important day seeks to promote girls' empowerment and fulfillment of their human rights, while also highlighting the challenges that girls all over the world face. According to the United Nations Women's Message on International Day of the Girl Child, girls face adversities that hinder their education, training, and entry into the workforce. This year, it is expected that 12 million girls under 18 will be married, and 21 million girls aged 15 to 19 years will become pregnant in developing regions. Under this year's theme, With Her, a Skilled Girl Force, International Day of the Girl Child will mark the beginning of a year-long effort to bring together partners and stakeholders to advocate for and draw attention and make investments to the most pressing needs and opportunities for girls to attain skills for employability, particularly in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. While this year's focus will be employability in the STEM areas, today is about highlighting the need to remove the various types of social discrimination and exploitation that girls face in their lives. Here at home, women have played a pivotal role in the creation and development of the Bahamas. And since gaining the right to vote just 56 years ago, Bahamian women have taken their active and influential place in the direction of our beloved country. While we have set the course of our Bahamas through our strength and inspiring others, we have also stepped up to become leaders in our own right, in politics, education, business, technology, and the arts. There is still a road ahead as we travel towards equal rights for women and girls. So we join the many organizations throughout the Bahamas as we continue to work, advocate, and activate until the goal of equal rights is fully realized. Today gives us cause to pause and align ourselves with our international counterparts, recognizing our responsibility to ensure that girls in the Bahamas have every opportunity to succeed. While many countries deal with the fact that girls and women face higher risks of sexual and gender-based violence, girls are 2.5 times more likely than boys to miss school during disasters, and displaced girls are often married off as children in an effort to secure their security. As a country, we should also take note of the issues girls face in our communities. There are still too many cases of young girls being exploited on social media. There are still too many unspoken cases of incest in our communities. There are still too many cases of domestic violence in the homes that impact the family. Too many cases of bullying in the schools. And there is still an unlevel playing field for women seeking financial independence. And yes, we must prepare our girls as the next generation of leaders with a focus on political leadership. The reality is, when 18,000 more females registered to vote than men, as was evident in the 2012 election, and when over 54% of the voters are female, and when 13% of all elected candidates are women, and when one female sits at the cabinet table, we know we have much work to do. And as the saying goes, if we're not sitting at the table, we are only on the menu. I commend the many NGOs working throughout the Bahamas who have as their mission to mentor, motivate, inspire, and prepare our girls for leadership. It is important that we continue to encourage these NGOs in their most important work, as they help and serve as a reminder to the government of their duty to women and girls in our country. As I conclude my communication on International Day of the Girl Child, I would like to thank the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, who has been very supportive. I would also like to acknowledge the work of the National Advisory Women's Council and all that they do in terms of looking at gender equality and how we should support women and girls in this country. To all our students in the chamber today and in Freeport and Long Island tuned into the Senate this morning, your attention is appreciated. We ask every Bahamian to join us starting today as we work together, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, determined to change the world and build a better future for the next generation of female leaders in the Bahamas, community by community. To commemorate this important day, we will now, after other senators have spoken, we plan to have a balloon release using biodegradable balloons, just in case anybody's asking. And we will do that from the balcony of the Senate. In Grand Bahama, we will also do a balloon release from Bishop Michael Eldon, Sunland Baptist, Lucayan International, St. George's, and Sir Jack Hayward, and 8 Maroc High Schools, all biodegradable. The idea is 7 balloons will be released at each location, representing the 700 islands and keys of the Bahamas and remembering our girls living throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I invite senators now who would like to bring a communication. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Jenny Dodson.
Good morning, fellow senators. And I'd like to say a special welcome to my colleagues from the teaching profession, because once a teacher, always a teacher, and also the students of Aaron Bailey, my alma mater, that is where I went, A. Vadley, D.W. Davis, L.W. Young, H.O. Nash, Anatole Rogers, S.C. McPherson, and also to Miss Bahamas, Anthony Hamilton from .org, Girl Corn members, and anyone else that I've forgotten. A pleasant good morning to everyone. In the words of Barack Obama, the best judge of whether or not a country is going to develop is how it treats its women. If it's educating girls, if women have equal rights, that country is going to move forward. But if women are oppressed and abused and illiterate, then they're going to fall behind. The idea of International Girls' Day began as a project of Plan International, a non-governmental organization that opened a worldwide campaign called Because I'm a Girl. Eventually, Plan International went to the United Nations and to get them involved, and through their agitation, we now celebrate the International Day of Girls. Celebrating this day allows the opportunity to discuss more prospects for girls and the gender inequality experienced by girls worldwide because of their gender. Areas such as access to education, nutrition, legal rights, medical care, and protection from discrimination, violence against women, and unfree child marriage are some of the areas where inequality is experienced. The celebration of this day reflects the successful emergence of girls and young women as a distinct cohort in the development of policy, programming, campaigning, and research. A new theme is chosen every year for this special day. A team of researchers led by Professor Valerie Hudson of Texas A&M University found that the single predictor for the stability and peacefulness of a country was not economic prosperity, the level of democracy, or ethnic and religious identity, but rather how well the women and girls of that country are treated. Hudson's research suggests that large gaps between the treatment of men and women in a society also have negative influences on economic growth, corruption, social welfare, and the level of violence. We must ensure that men and girls of the Bahamas and the world are valued equally and have the same opportunities as our male counterparts. We know that investing in women and girls is a force multiplier and can be a powerful catalyst for economic development. This includes equal access to education and preventing and responding to gender-based violence. International Day of Girls increases the awareness of issues faced by girls around the world. Many global development plans do not include or consider girls, and their issues become invisible. More than 62 million girls around the world have no access to education. 62 million. Worldwide and collectively, girls ages 5 to 14 spend more than 160 million hours more on household chores than boys of the same age. Globally, 1 in 4 girls are married before the age of 18. On October 11, 2016, Emma Watson, who is also the United Nations Women's Goodwill Ambassador, urged countries and families worldwide to end child marriage. Many girls around the world are vulnerable to acts of sexual violence, and the perpetrators often go unpunished. The Day of Girls helped raise awareness not only of the issues that girls face, but also what is likely to happen when those problems are solved. For example, educating girls helps reduce the rate of child marriage, disease, and helps strengthen the economy by helping girls have access to higher paying jobs. The theme for today is with her, a skilled girls force. Today's generation of girls are preparing to enter a world of work that is being transformed by innovation and automation. Education and skilled workers are in great demand, but roughly a quarter of young people, most of them female, are currently neither employed or in education or training. Of the 1 billion young people, including 600 million adolescent girls, that will enter the workforce in the next decade, more than 90% of those living in developing countries will work in the informal sector. And the informal sector is the sectors that are not formalized. It's really informal, like selling drinks on the street, where low or no pay, abuse, and exploitation are common. And we see this more and more happening in the Bahamas with the informal sector. On today, we are working alongside all girls to expand existing learning opportunities, chart new pathways, and calling on the global community to rethink how to prepare them for a successful transition into the world of work. In the Bahamas, according to the Tribune on August 9, 2017, in an article, Child Abuse, 856 cases in just 1 year, reported that there were 856 reported cases of child abuse in our country in 2016, with neglect, physical abuse, and sexual abuse accounting for 92% of the total incidents reported to the Department of Social Services. According to these latest stats, which were requested by the Tribune, between January and December 2016, officials saw 478 cases of neglect, 180 incidents of physical abuse, and 130 cases of sexual abuse. Incest followed as the fourth highest kind of child abuse reported to officials, with 33 incidents. Emotional abuse, abandonment, and verbal abuse, although smaller in scale to the other more serious incidents, were also recorded with 17, 13, and 5 cases, respectively. A further breakdown by island revealed that 76% of all of these incidents happened in New Providence. In the capital, 655 cases of child abuse were recorded, neglect, 389 incidents, physical abuse, 140 cases, and there were 69 cases of sexual abuse. And that's only what is reported that we know about. Officials also said there were 31 cases of incest in New Providence. In Grand Bahama, there were 91 reported cases of abuse. Of this number, 42 incidents of incest were recorded, 30 cases of sexual abuse, and 16 cases of physical abuse. That is definitely something that we need to look at. The Bahamian economy is facing growing challenges to upgrade skills level of the workforce and match them to higher quality employment, particularly to meet the growing demand in the tourism sector. Noting the high unemployment rates among young Bahamians, which is over 30%, and the less educated segments of society, the IDB said, and the national 14.7% overall jobless rate was coexisting with a skills gap where the private sector is not able to find qualified workers in skills areas. That is something that we have to think about. When it comes to technology and automation, which is the future of our country, we seriously need to think about that. When we look at people in the world of work, the most commonly cited reason for staff dismissals was problems with behavior. In the same survey, when asked about the main difficulties in recruiting staff, employers cited the lack of specific skills, followed by lack of experience and the lack of soft skills. The survey and consultation with employers from every industry indicate that firms are affected in several ways by skill-related issues. The lack of skills, particularly soft skills, and soft skills is when you're talking about communication, how to get along with each other. Those kinds of things are soft skills that we find that we are lacking, particularly in our youth that graduate from high school. These are identified with productivity losses due to unsatisfactory performance, absenteeism, lack of responsibility, and commitment to the job. The lack of specific skills increases the time spent on recruiting workers. The lack of soft skills was the main reason for dismissals, increasing turnover costs for employers. In conclusion, under this theme, with her, a skilled girl force, International Day of the Girl will mark the beginning of a long-year effort to bring together partners and stakeholders to advocate for and draw attention and investments to the most pressing needs and opportunities for girls to attain skills for employability. Let us today join UN Women globally as we stand with girls everywhere, as they inspire, as they innovate, and take charge of their own future. Across the world, girls continue to face adversities that hinder their education, training, and entry into the workforce. They have less access to information, communication technology, and resources, such as the internet, where the global gender gap is growing. A quarter of young people, most of them girls, are neither employed nor getting an education or training. This year alone, 12 million girls under 18 will be married, and 21 million girls aged 15 to 19 will become pregnant in developing regions. The 1.1 billion girls of today's world are challenging the status quo. They are redefining girlhood, and they're doing so against the odds. And yet they persist, yet they succeed. They are innovating technology to solve global challenges. They are standing up for the environment. They are raising their voices against violence. And they are, most importantly, preparing to run for political office. And I'd like to send a clarion call out to all Bahamian women, including you young girls sitting here in the gallery today, to think about in the future that you will grace the halls of Parliament or the Senate. That is how far you can come, because there is no limit to where you can go. And I am a prime example of that happening. As Bethany Hamilton said, courage, sacrifice, determination, commitment, toughness, heart, talent, and guts. That's what little girls are made of. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we hear from Senator the Honorable Clay Sweeting, I just want to acknowledge the presence of the Minister for Social Services and Urban Development for joining us in the gallery. I've heard the minister say that he puts his girls and boys on equal footing, and I thank him for doing that. It's a great example, and I thank him for operating in this female world as Minister of Social Services and Urban Development. So thank you for lending your support always and being in the gallery on this very important day for girls around the world. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Clay Sweeting.
Good morning, Madam President. I would like to share with your sentiments, I along with opposition, and join hands with you on this, the International Day of the Girl Child. I would like to also welcome all the persons in the gallery, including the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, Ms. Bahamas, the students and staff of the schools in Nassau.
Test. Got me?
and as well as students watching in Long Island and Grand Bahama. Across the world, girls face adversities that hinder their education, training, and entry into the workforce. Even in our beautiful country, I still think we have some way to go in regards to equality for women. A quarter of young people, most of them girls, are neither employed nor getting an education or training. But Madam President, as my wife reminds me daily, women are strong, and they persist and they succeed. They are the bedrock of our society in the Bahamas, and especially where I grew up, where women basically run the households as fathers are gone for weeks at a time. So once again, I share with you, the government, as we honor women, young ladies, and young girls of this country, and all women across the United Nations. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Kwesi Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I want to also join with you and with fellow senators in congratulating and in recognizing all girls and women on this International Girls' Day, International Day of the Girl Child Day. Madam President, I also want to recognize the Minister for Social Services and all of the distinguished guests who are here, and particularly our students, our female students who are here. Madam President, I believe that I am uniquely qualified to bring remarks this morning, as I have not one, not two, not three, but 4 lovely girl children. And Madam President, I've had a conversation with God, and I am completely settled with what He has given to me. But Madam President, I want to say to the female girls, particularly those in Grand Bahama, who I understand are watching us today. And so I want to send a shout out to those girls who are watching us from LIS, those who are watching us from Sunland, those who are watching us from BMES, those who are watching us from Sir Jack Haywood, and also those who are watching us from St. George's and 8 Mile Rock High School. We see you as you are seeing us. We are seeing the pictures that you are posting, and that's the wonderful thing about technology, is that even though you are in Grand Bahama, we can still share in the same event and the same occasion. So we want to send a shout out to you. Madam President, there are 3 women, Bahamian women, that I just want to very briefly focus on and to encourage the young ladies who are in this gallery and the young ladies who are listening to us across the country. We have some of the best women in the world. I do not say that as a cliche. I do not say that lightly. I do not say that just because it sounds good. I say it because it is the truth. When I look at women, Bahamian women, like Miss Aisha Bowe, who is an aerospace engineer and the first Bahamian to work at NASA. She's been the top in the world at what she does, and she is a Bahamian. When I look at Bahamian women like Christy Power, who is one of the top executives at Google, who worked in New York for a period of time and now is home assisting the government with their technology initiative. But she is one of the best computer software designers in the world and was recruited right out of college to participate and to work for Google, which is one of the biggest technology companies in the world. And then when I look at Shawnee Miller, who without a shadow of a doubt is the top in the world at what she does, and that is a Bahamian woman. So when I say that Bahamian women are some of the best in the world, I say that because it is the truth. But I say that to you young women who are here and who are listening, because just as they are the best in the world at what they do, and they came from the same places you came from, went to the same schools that you went to, played on the same parks that you played in, ate the same fish and conch that you eat every day, and they are the best in the world. And what that means is there is no reason whatsoever that you cannot be the best in the world at what you do. So when you approach your schoolwork, and when you approach your athletics, and when you approach your life, do not just believe that you could be successful in the Bahamas. Do not believe that you could just be successful in the Caribbean. Do not believe that you could just be successful on this side of the planet. But there is evidence to show that you can be the best in the entire world in the field that you choose to go into. There is nothing that you cannot accomplish with hard work, with dedication, and with God on your side. And so I want to encourage all young women, from a father of 4 young girls, to all of you, that you can be the best in the world at what you do. Congratulations, and may God bless you.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Jasmine Darius.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to also honor the President of my minister, the Honorable Frankie Campbell, also the National Women's Advisory Council Chairperson, Ms. Coralie Adderley, the new Miss World Bahamas, teachers, and also the committee members of GirlCon. Today we join in with the United Nations and the international community, and we celebrate today as the International Day of the Girl Child, and also the successful rise of girls and young women as a distinguished force in government, in business, in technology, in education, and also in national development. I believe, along with Senator the Honorable Kwesi Thompson, I'm also uniquely qualified, as I have 3 girls. And so today we observe and support and lend our voices in the fight for more opportunity for girls, to increase the awareness of gender equality faced by girls worldwide. Areas of inequality include access to education, nutrition, legal rights, medical care, protection from discrimination, violence against women, and the unfree child marriage. This year's theme is "With Her, a Skilled Girl Force." And so I stand with my colleagues today to empower and to provoke innovation and encourage young women to own your destiny. Along with other NGOs and civic organizations in Grand Bahama, as a pastor for the last 13 years, we have held yearly empowerment sessions and programs to encourage young girls to dream big, to reach high, to invest in education, and also to believe in themselves regardless of setbacks and difficulty. I would like to say to all of the young ladies in Grand Bahama, the young girls in Grand Bahama that are watching, I would also like to pinpoint the young girls at Fresh Creek Primary School, Bowen Sound Primary School, Cargo Creek Primary School, Central Andros High School, and in the gallery today, R.M. Bailey, A.F. Adderley, T.W. Davis, L.W. Young, Anatole Rogers, S.C. McPherson, and H.O. Nash. I say to you, that you are a skilled girl for us. And you are more than pretty. You are powerful. Your life is purposeful. And your life has great meaning. We want you to know today that we are rooting for you and that we support you and we celebrate you and all that you will contribute to the development of this nation and indeed to the world at large. God bless you and may the Lord bless all of the young girls, especially in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Senator. The chair now recognizes Senator the Honorable Mike Darville.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Today is with great pride that I stand in this honorable place to congratulate you, the Senate staff, and all the public officials who worked very hard to make this day a reality. After listening to Senator Darius and Kwesi Thompson, I don't know if I'm qualified to speak because I'm a father of 2 sons. But I want to point out that it is the male child who is responsible for the sex of the child. And so I was not able to produce a female child, but I'm pleased to say that I have a grandchild who is a girl. And so I believe now in the 2nd generation it qualifies me to speak in this honorable place. But, Madam President, when you spoke in this place a couple days ago about your intention to bring girls in from the various high schools and schools across New Providence and by way of internet throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to celebrate the International Day of the Girl Child, I thought it was an excellent and innovative idea. But I believe the ceremony that is about to take place after we make our contribution concerning to this matter in this place, I think will put the icing on the cake. Because it truly will represent what this country is trying to do to increase the awareness and the need to put opportunities in place so that we ensure that girls throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas have all the ingredients necessary to succeed. I want to also state that on our team, we have Senator Jobette, who just gave birth to a beautiful, lovely girl, and due to circumstances that many mothers have to face, she's unable to be here today. I also would like to indicate that our leader, who is traveling abroad, also support you in this great event. And he too brings his remarks to girls, particularly in the gallery, and those who are watching throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But there's one thing that I want to point out, Madam President. As we move throughout the various constituencies throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, we have found that many of our young girls lack the opportunity to receive proper health care services throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I am pleading for all, including us on this side, to work diligently to put in place the concept of universal primary health care so children, particularly young girls who are going through the stages of puberty, could have access to the proper health care to ensure that they go through the process of menarche very, very smoothly and the transition from a young girl to a woman. Madam President, I am pleased to stand in full support and to have the bipartisan support from both sides, particularly when it comes to the youth of our country and today in celebration of the International Day of the Girl Child. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I support what you're doing, and I encourage you to bring further awareness on behalf of this honorable place and the other place. Thank you, and God bless you all, and good luck in the future.
Thank you, Senator. Chair now recognizes Senator the Honorable Renard Henfield.
Good morning, Madam President, and I thank you. And I wish to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues today. You know, this is the most distinguished audience or gallery we've ever had since I've been here in the Senate. Not simply because of the minister, but because of the women in the gallery. My colleagues have already acknowledged the minister, and I wish to acknowledge the women that are here. This is the most distinguished audience we've ever had in the Senate. And as my colleague, Senator Dotson, shared earlier, ever since 2012, October 11 to be specific, this day has been celebrated as the International Day of the Girl Child. And for me, it was a significant day, as at the time my wife and I were shopping for the crib for our first of 2 daughters. So I am the proud father of 2 girls. I have no sons. God has nothing else to give me. I am very proud to have 2 daughters, Ren Zaire and Reina Zambia, and both of their names means African queens. And I wanted to instill in my daughters from their birth, as they grow up, that they have value, that they are important, and that they will make a difference in this world. And I wish to share that while I am a proud father of 2 daughters, I am also a concerned father of 2 daughters, as they live in a country that still has so many boys' clubs. They live in a country that while our women, like Madam President, have done so much to advance the cause of females and women, there's so much more to be done. And while I am so happy to be the father of 2 daughters, I share that, and I've shared before, that my wife is Trinidadian. And both of my daughters were born in the U.S. And when my daughters were born, as a Bahamian outside this country, it was automatic. They were Bahamian citizens. It didn't matter that my wife was a Trinidadian. When my daughters were born, they were Bahamian. My wife, who was Trinidadian, was also able to pass on her citizenship to our daughters born outside of Trinidad to a non-Trinidadian. And yet, my people, my Bahamian women, married to non-Bahamians and have children outside this country do not have that right. So while a lot has been done, there's a lot more to be done to address the issues of women and girls. And I implore all of you today to continue in your fight, in this fight. And I offer myself as a father of 2 daughters, the proud father of 2 daughters, as a foot soldier for you in this cause. I would be delighted to speak up and speak to your issues. I'm always in trouble, so there won't be any extra burden on me. But I am proud of you. I am proud of Madam President. And I wish to encourage all of you today and for the rest of your lives to make a difference for women. My daughters will be the benefactors of all you do. And I hope someday that they will join you in the struggle, in the fight to raise awareness and make a difference. So thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Anna Faye Knowles Ferguson.
Madam President, I am delighted to speak in this honorable place this morning on this beautiful International Day of the Girl Child. I am so pleased that in the audience I have a student who's a teacher. And for those who don't know, I was a teacher for about 44 years. They were the good old days. And I enjoy the classroom, and today feels like a classroom, a big, huge classroom. And so I am proud to see all of you in the gallery. And I stand on the protocol of Madam President. But permit me to just make mention of my minister, Mr. Campbell, and I know he has a heart for girls and women. And so we are safe with a minister like that. I salute you girls, all of you, young ladies in the world, but particularly you who are living in the Bahamas, in the 242 zone. Bahamaland. Some 6 years ago, this day, the 11th of October, a resolution was brought about to dub this day as the International Day of the girl child. And so, it is so fitting on this day that we remember the girl child all over the world, and to be aware of what is happening to them. Not only what is happening, what is predestined for them. When we looked at the girl child in the Bahamas, and we compare it with what the average female is facing, we are somewhat concerned that even though we are somewhat equal in the Bahamas, like my colleagues, we have a long way to go. We're not bad, we're not there yet. There is still a distance to cover. And so, girls, young ladies, I salute you on this day. And it is fitting that you find some mentoring in your teachers, in the social services arena, in the church. I want you to get a hero and emulate someone. I'm sure that we have in this Bahamas a number of institutions, a number of persons who are willing, able, and ready to help you on this journey called life. Now, according to a recent research, more than 62 million girls around the world have no access to education. And the first thing you need to do is educate yourself. And education means that it will take you from one point to the other. Most of my colleagues have already told you about, at the age of 18 across the world, how much persons would have been married, some married off their own, not of their own will, forced into a lot of things. A number have been sexually and otherwise abused, and all of those issues. Today we want to go further. We want to be aware of those things, but we want to dwell on how we could empower ourselves, how we could move from one level to the other. Just this Saturday, Madam President, the Anglican Church women, known as ACW, was very pivotal in, and this is what organizations that I'm talking about could help, was very pivotal in having a seminar for young ladies. It was their 16th anniversary. In other words, for 16 years, they have been mentoring young ladies. The event took place at St. Matthew's Church, and the guest was the Most Honorable Dame Marguerite Penlin. She was dynamic. Such words came out of her mouth. She exhorted the young ladies to let their hearts thoughts, words, and deeds shaped by the foundation of their faith as good characters will always open doors to you. Now, all that means is when I was growing up in the family island, I was told that manners and respect take you over the world, but when I learned, I had to pay for my ticket, so. But it means that you ought to be respectful to yourselves, and others will respect you. Build up good characters and be wise. I salute the ACW for that. This is just among one of the many organizations mentors youth. You yourself, Madam President, is in charge of the girls' corn. And Madam President continue to talk about it. And just in this coming month, next month, November, I missed last year's event, but I hope to be at that prestigious event with girls and young ladies in Freeport. Finally, I want to salute you, Madam President, for, in the words of Dr. Davo, Senator Davo, when you said that you were bringing members from school, from community, as well as students from the various schools, I had no idea that it was going to be in as huge as this. Like Senator Henfield said, this is the largest gathering ever to the Senate. I mean, this is a huge gathering. This is larger than the House of Assembly. I am elated, Madam President. I am elated, and this bodes well what will come in the future. And so, teachers, I know you're always passionate and you always do your best. I know that sometimes it's rough and your pay may not always be the best. But we have some girls that we need to mentor and do our best for. So I ask that you continue to do your best. To the girl child, to the young women, and to the female of this land. And to you, female, be all that you can be. Learn all that you can. And leave the rest to God. I salute you on this International Day of the Girl Child. And I hope that all goes well with you from now until you leave this part of the globe. Congratulations, and hello to my student, Raquel. Raquel. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, colleague senators, I rise to, first of all, associate myself with all of the fulsome and positive remarks that have been made by all senators from both sides of this table as we all stand together as one united Bahamian family to affirm our love, our appreciation, and our best wishes to all girl children born in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on this, the International Day of the Girl Child. Let me, on behalf of the Most Honorable Prime Minister and his dear wife, who is on a family island tour to meet with young female students throughout several family islands, to encourage them to continue in the noble pathways laid by their foremothers over the past hundreds of years. Indeed, had it not been for the Bahamian woman, none of us would be here. Let's start there. Let me say, though, that in our modern political dispensation, the way for every young girl, child born in the Bahamas has been made so much clearer and easier by the sacrifice, the vision, and the struggles of Bahamian women, among whom I must point to persons such as our Governor General, Dame Marguerite Pinling, the most excellent, I believe it is, Governor General. And if one were to look at the course of her life, from a barefoot child from South Andros to the top of Mount Fitzwilliam, having been the spouse and helpmeet of our nation's first Prime Minister and the father of Bahamian independence, Sir Lyndon Pinling, you have, each of you, young ladies, a story of tremendous courage, self-improvement, and struggle for the benefit of the Bahamian people. Closely following her are giants such as Janet Boswick, who was the first female president of the Bar Association, Bahamas Bar, first female to be elected to Parliament. And that in itself was a seismic shift in Bahamian politics. The thought that a woman could go out there into the field of battle and win and take her seat in our Parliament, it was, I can tell you, having lived through it, a seismic shift in the Bahamian body politic, thanks to Janet Gwyneth Boswick. And we think of people like Dame Doris Johnson, the first female to be appointed as a cabinet minister, first female president of this chamber. Again, women who, in their public life and sacrifice, have charted the course. Rome Italia Johnson, first female Speaker of the House. Ms. Marguerite MacDonald, first female Secretary to the Cabinet. There are so many firsts. I think of the late Dr. Keva Bethel, first female president of what is now the University of the Bahamas. In every sphere of our national existence, women, females have led the way in so many ways that have enriched the lives of every Bahamian. When we look around the world and we see the exploitation of girls, early and forced child marriages, the genital mutilation, the economic and social repression and subjugation of women, let us thank God that we in this beautiful Bahamas have never had to grapple with those issues and the horrors that are even today being inflicted upon girl children. I see my colleague, the Honorable Minister for Social Services, and I understood I saw the sharp comment about this girl ministry. I wish to enlighten all that my distinguished colleague, Minister Frankie Campbell, is not the first male to have handled this female ministry, if you will. In fact, my colleague minister in this place, Dion Folks, in the last Ingham administration, was substantive minister. Of course, all of those matters were dealt with by his Minister of State, Loretta Butler Turner, at that time, but he too. And I believe there are other males who have had the tender superintendents, Algernon and Allen, of the Social Services Ministry. And each in their way expanded the outreach of social services to more and more and more of our Bahamian children and Bahamian women. Let me say that just to Dr. Darvel, that the National Health Insurance primary care facilities have not been done away with, and primary health care is still a goal of this present government. If there are areas where in family islands there are defective services, we only need to know, and we will do what has to be done to ensure that such defects are corrected. But it must be remembered that it is an inescapable reality with which we strive and contend every day, that healthcare services and the quality of services in many of our family islands are not where we would wish them to be. But every day we try to make an improvement, just as you did, just as we continue to do. Let me say also, with regard to what Senator Handfield stated quite bluntly, and this is something that has weighed heavily on me, I want every Bahamian to be reminded of the fact that both governments in this country that we have had since independence have gone down to shocking and crushing defeats on this issue of the equality of women when submitted to referenda, or as we'd say in the Bahamas, referendums. It is unfortunate, because I won't give any statistics, but I will say this, that in my ignorant point of view, since women are more than half of the voting population of the registered voters, they are more than half. There are more women registered to vote than men. And if every registered woman had voted in favor of either of the referendums, we would have had constitutional equality a long time ago. So this is the question that we must all as a society ask ourselves. Would it take the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition hugging one another up on a stage to cause us? Is that what we need? Or is it something deeper in our psyche, in our mental approach? Is it the mixture of the issue of constitutional equality with other issues like immigration, and are these the things that cause us as a people, and in that I include men and women voters, to have consistently rejected the idea of full constitutional equality? It is a work in progress. And perhaps if we were able to craft the correct mix of constitutional equality with constitutional limitations, if you will, someday we will get it right. I pray that day is soon, because we cannot all have the equality that we have functionally. We have functional equality. In my view, there's functional equality, but there can never be full equality unless and until the rights enshrined in the Constitution and reserved to men equally apply to Bahamian women. So whether we do it in a way that limits everybody's rights in certain areas, so that there's equality in limitation as well as equality in the rights that are granted. There has to be a formula. And hopefully if we can achieve that formula, we can eventually, and I hope soon, move to a status of full constitutional equality between men and women. But let me emphasize, as we have emphasized both here and abroad, constitutional equality is a goal to be aimed for. But there's nobody who can look at the legal structure in the Bahamas, absent the Constitution, the rights enjoyed, the privileges is extended, who could possibly suggest that women, girl children, vis-a-vis boy children, women vis-a-vis men, that functionally there is any form of inequality, functionally, and under the ordinary law of the land. And if there's any wage discrimination in the private sector, we need to find out about it. Certainly in the public sector, there's no such thing. And the public sector, of course, as we know, is the major driver not only of employment in the public sector, but in terms of setting the standards that the private sector follows in its treatment of employees. And so it is not a matter of wage discrimination that has raised its head in any time in my public life, which has been long. But we do hope that there is no functional wage discrimination in the private sector. I've certainly not heard of any, but in that one area, there could arise a question. Certainly in the public sector, there's absolutely no wage discrimination to be found. Let me also just indicate that Minister Folks sort of sprained his back, and that is why he is not here today. He's going to take some steroids or something as recommended, and whatever it is whatever the painkiller or whatever, and he should be here later on today, hopefully. With those few remarks, Madam President, and I already started there, on behalf of the government and people of the Bahamas, and in particular on behalf of the Most Honorable Prime Minister and his dear wife, I wish to express the full support of the government of the Bahamas for this wonderful, ennobling, and positive initiative in giving special recognition to the girl child. And I urge every Bahamian, in everything you do, not just on this special day, but every day, to give the maximum respect that you can possibly give to all whom you come in contact with, most particularly children, and particularly girl children. And on those notes, Madam President, I thank you for this, I think, wonderful initiative that I credit you for, Madam President, in bringing to this chamber such a wonderful ceremony of recognition of the girl child in honor of the International Day of the Girl Child. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. I believe at this point we do plan to end our day with a ceremonial balloon release, and we would ask the 7 girls who are participating and all of the other girls to join us on the terrace of the Senate, along with the Minister and all of the other Senators. Thank you.
Madam President, in order to facilitate this very fine proposed ending of the morning of the day, I would now beg leave to move that the Senate, the business of the Senate be suspended for 15 minutes. If I may obtain a seconder.
I rise to second.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate will suspend for 15 minutes. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The business of Senate is now suspended for 15 minutes. Messages from the Governor General.
None.
Messages from the House of Assembly.
None.
Laying of documents by ministers.
None.
Communications by ministers.
None.
Communications by senators.
None.
Questions. Answers to questions.
None.
Presentations of petitions. Appointment of select committees.
None.
Reports of committees.
None.
First reading of bills.
None.
Second reading of bills.
Madam President.
Second reading and committal of bills. Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel.
Thank you very much. Madam President, I beg leave to move for the second reading and committal of the following bill, which is a bill for an act to establish principles and procedures of responsible fiscal management and to facilitate effective parliamentary and public scrutiny of the fiscal performance of the government. And I beg that this would be read a second time and committed. We do intend to move to full passage today. Madam President, with the passage and ultimate enactment of this bill, the Bahamas would have taken a giant step forward. This is truly a banner day for fiscal prudence, fiscal management, and financial accountability for the government of the Bahamas and every successive government once this bill comes into force. It is a bill that will subject the Minister of Finance and every Minister of Government to the oversight of its current account spendings, practices, projections, changes based on exigencies, all of these things, everything to do with the management of the annual budget is going to be subjected to the day-to-day scrutiny of a Fiscal Responsibility Council, which is an independent and autonomous council that will be constituted, and also to the scrutiny of Parliament. Never before in the history of the Bahamas has there ever been the possibility of subjecting the day-to-day practices of the government in terms of its management of the annual budget to direct current scrutiny. The structure of financial supervision which pertains today and which will be changed fundamentally by this bill is historically the government passes its budget every year, deals with whatever challenges and issues arise in that budget, and 3 years later the Auditor General audits the accounts, and that is when the budgetary income and expenditure of government accounts are settled 3 years later, when the Auditor General has thoroughly reviewed all the income, all the expenditure, all the environment warrants, in-block environment, out-of-block environment, contingency spending, etc. of the government. And what happens then is the finalized audited accounts are prepared and are submitted to the Public Accounts Committee. So the Public Accounts Committee has active review of 3 years, what happened 3 years before, long after the dust has settled. So what this bill does, in short, is it requires the Minister of Finance, of course, speaking on behalf of the government, of which he is a part, to set fiscal targets for the year. It is not done during the budget process. That's a separate debate. This is where he makes a statement. He's to make that statement in November, second Tuesday in November. And the Fiscal Responsibility Council is supposed to comment on it by the third Wednesday in November. So you got about a week and a half between the statement and then the comment from the Fiscal Responsibility Council. Once those broad, and I'm going to come to the details of it, once the broad and detailed fiscal targets are set in that statement, this is, of course, in tandem with the budget that has would have already been passed as of the 30th of June and brought into effect on the 1st of July. So August, September, October, November, 4 months later, you then set your targets commensurate with those targets that would have been announced as a matter of course in the budget debate. It is commented on by the council and basically becomes the standard by which your expenditure going forward until the next November is going to be judged by the world, but particularly by Bahamian society, because you will have the government statement, you will have hopefully a supportive, but it can be a critical assessment by the Fiscal Responsibility Council. And somewhere between the two, or maybe if the two are in tandem, we move ahead smartly, or somewhere between the two, if there's a variance, a compromise will be struck and we will proceed. Let me say that there are 2 other countries, according to our researchers in the Caribbean, that have a similar construct, but none of them goes as far as the Bahamas. None of them. So if there's, for example, a financial or natural disaster or crisis that causes the government to have to shift its fiscal priorities and its spending away from, well, in this case, certainly away from the fiscal plan that has been advanced. The government in other countries merely makes a statement, sends it to Parliament. In some cases, it's a fiscal council. In others, it's the Auditor General who has that responsibility, who carries out the responsibility of what we now call the Fiscal Council, Fiscal Responsibility Council. They will make do an assessment of the statement, make a critique or support the change in fiscal spending to meet an emergency. So you have, for example, I'll give you an example of how it would work from recent history. Presuming this bill had been in force in 2016, in November, you would have had the statements, but then shortly after that you would have had Hurricane Matthew, which busted everything, busted the budget, threw everything out of whack. In response to that, the government would be required to come and issue a statement to Parliament and indicate what the exigency or emergency was, how much the damage has been, how the government proposes by altering its spending and even its borrowing projections to accommodate the recovery from that issue. And that would all have to go to Parliament. In the 2 other countries we looked at in the region, that is the extent of the oversight. But we, based, I think, largely on the urgings of civil society, and I see in the gallery some of the leaders of civil society who are here to make sure we don't change not a line, not a jot, not a tittle of the bill. But we've gone further than every other Caribbean country. And indeed, I would venture to say every country in the world, by not only requiring the delivery of the change, the statement of the change in the policy based on legitimacy, but we then subject the Minister of Finance and any other minister responsible for this change in the fiscal projections to the tender mercies of a parliamentary select committee. Now, the bill envisages that the House of Assembly in due course, and it's not for me to give advice to the House of Assembly, since I was told that to do so would be to overstep the bounds recently. You know, like most lawyers, the Attorney General only gives advice when asked. He does not. So I don't presume to give advice to the House of Assembly, but I presume that having passed the bill and recognizing that it calls for the appointment of a select committee, that at some point in their wisdom, the leadership in that other place would see the wisdom of amending the rules in accordance with the spirit and intention of the Act, to make the Fiscal Responsibility Committee, Select Committee, a standing committee of the House, so that every time a new session of Parliament is commenced, it would be one of the committees appointed as the second act, if you will, upon the starting of the session. The first, of course, being if you, after an election, you need to elect a speaker first and a deputy and all that. Then you appoint the select committee, the standing committees of the House. So I'd anticipate that would happen. The original suggestion that was in the bill, which didn't meet the wholesome support of the government, was for this to go through the Public Accounts Committee. And this is a point that one of the civil society groups sought to make hay over in a statement made after the bill was first debated in the other place. And while I respect the views of civil society, and I certainly in this don't speak for the government, I personally felt that there are two issues. One is it's not done anywhere in the world even to submit a minister to parliamentary scrutiny on his current accounts, or even every minister, or even the government, not on the current accounts, to parliamentary scrutiny. And we are taking that step. But to put it in the hands of the Public Accounts Committee, and this is only my opinion, smaller opinion, not lawyer's opinion, my opinion, my view. I can only speak for myself. That it's fundamentally inconsistent with the traditional and indeed constitutional function, small c constitution, not big C constitution. Something that is necessary for the proper functioning of a parliament. And the Public Accounts Committee being an established feature of the Westminster system, it has a peculiar jurisdiction. Its jurisdiction is to investigate or consider reports made to it by the Auditor General. I said some countries in the Caribbean, the Auditor General performs the function of the Fiscal Responsibility Council. But with the assistance of civil society, we embraced the view that it's far better to have the independent eyes and ears of civil society in this statutory construct called the Fiscal Responsibility Council than to have the Auditor General performing those functions. Because this council will have the right to critically review not only the fiscal responsibility projections of the minister, but any changes and to comment on them publicly. And if Parliament deems a matter or a change sufficiently serious, Parliament can refer it to what we hope will ultimately be a standing committee, but what the Act in present circumstances refers to as a select committee of Parliament, for that committee to look at. So, bearing in mind the peculiar functions of the Public Accounts Committee already and its high responsibilities under our present arrangements, it was felt that that would be to overburden the committee and cause it to lose focus from its primary role in our constitutional structure. And that is the reason why I believe the slight change may have been because it's more consistent with the structure that civil society itself advocates, which is not fit to be the Auditor General, who really is a part of the government. So how can the government really independently and critically assess itself? You know, that can't happen. It can't happen. And it's not that anybody has their foot on anybody's neck or anybody's hand to anybody's back. It's not anything. It's just by the very nature of having a government, a constitutional government post. And in a sense, the ethos of the post is such that you are in a position performing a governmental responsibility. And it's felt that to have this whole issue of how government determines and orders its priorities and how government polices itself in the degrees to which it adheres to its professed standards. It is far better for democracy, for financial accountability, and as a scourge to mandate fiscal discipline, to have that primary oversight largely in the hands of independent, motivated civil society, as opposed to being carried out by someone who already had functions within the government structure. So let's look at this bill to get a sense of what is being created. Well, the fundamental issue is, what is the bill trying to achieve? And that is set out in Section 3. And it states the objectives of this act, as it will be when it's passed, is to establish the principles and procedure of responsible fiscal management, meaning the responsible management of taxpayers' dollars. Now, you could say, well, it ain't taxpayers' dollars, you gotta borrow all this money. You gotta borrow all kind of money, but taxpayers have to pay it back. Every nickel the government borrows, every taxpayer has to pay back. The objective is to guide the formulation. So ministers are no longer, and in particular ministers of finance, are no longer going to have their rights sort of in some intellectual bubble to just decide what they would like to recommend to their cabinet and then parliamentary colleagues should be done in the year. There are going to be principles that are set out in this act that will, as a matter of law, guide the Minister of Finance in what projections, what budget he comes with, and how he proposes in the course of the financial year to manage and administer public spending. And so it is to guide the formulation and the implementation of the financial objectives. To guide the annual budget within a medium-term financial framework, which means you're not looking at the impact of the budget over a 20-year period. You're looking at it over a 3-year period, a 5-year period, that sort of thing. And so you're looking at that. And it's also to facilitate effective parliamentary and, very importantly, public scrutiny of the financial performance of the government. And this act, by Section 4, applies to all public entities. So don't say Bahamas Air. You can't look at why they got $90 million overrun this year. Bahamas Air, watch out. Don't look at BPL and say, well, we can do what we want to. We have to look at why government have to go and guarantee or 300 million, 400 million loan to support the operations of BPL. That is a matter that will be a part of the overall Fiscal Responsibility Council. Once you have disclosure, then disclosure is to the council and to the public. Then you have a public, a populace, a people that are armed with information, that are able to, well, social media, I mean, they slice and dice everything. You got more QC, you have more Nobel Prize economists commenting around in WhatsApp groups, and you could shake a stick out in the Bahamas. There's nothing, once it's public, that won't be sliced, diced, chopped up, ground down, refined, discussed, and rebuffed, top to bottom. So that is what this bill will do. It will bring every current decision of the government directly out to the public. And it applies to all public entities, as I say, Bahamas Air, BPL, etc., public offices, public office holders, that means the politicians, public office holders, who are responsible for receiving, using, or managing public resources, revenues, or monies at all levels of government. So that includes local, central government, government agencies, government corporations, you name it. It includes the executives and its agencies, that's the cabinet and its agencies, the legislature and its agencies, so that applies to Parliament, the judiciary and its agencies, constitutional and semi-autonomous agencies. So, for example, let's look at a constitutional agency, let's say the Public Service Commission. If they go hog wild and start hiring a bunch of people or whatever, or raising salaries or to such an extent that the budget becomes unsustainable, they can be questioned. They can be criticized, etc. Okay? So this is, it goes to local government and decentralized agencies, public bodies, government-owned and controlled companies, not just corporations, not just the BPLs, etc. But since they converted BEC, the Bahamas Electricity Corporation, which is a public corporation, into a private company called Bahamas Power and Light, which is a private company. That too is covered. So, for example, the government recently purchased the Grand Lucayan Hotel and properties, associated properties. And that was done through an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. It's a private company called Lucayan Renewals Limited. Well, that's captured here as well. And in that case, now we know the timelines would have been off according to the bill, because you have the budget is passed in June, and the statement is made in November. But had things been sort of shifted around and we were past that statement and now we're coming to purchase this hotel, we would know that the government, as has actually occurred, advanced several million to put the deposit down and to pay a part of the purchase price. Several more million for support. None of these things were budgeted expenditure because they weren't foreseen at the time of the passing of this year's budget. You recall that the government went to Parliament, the House of Assembly, and passed the necessary borrowing resolution to support its expenditure, etc. In due course, once all of the ancillary spending, not borrowing, associated with the purchase have been analyzed, catalogued, and settled, government will at some point, and probably most likely around the time of the midterm budget review next year, after Christmas, will come with a supplemental appropriations bill to capture the extraordinary expenditure. And this is all contemplated in the wording of the Constitution itself. Okay, that it is when it is practicable that the government will come. It's not practicable until we have, it's no point in coming with a supplementary appropriation for this set, and then we know we have another set coming in of extraordinary expenditures associated with the purchase that don't involve borrowing, spending out of the recurrent resources that the government has at its disposal. We need to get a full and final settlement, dust settled, get all of the figures in, get all of the dollars in, so that when we come with the appropriations bill, as will occur at a convenient time, or whenever practicable, which won't be long, that bill will accurately reflect all of the extraordinary spending associated with the purchase, but not being borrowed monies. And so that is how it will work. Now, had that happened with this bill in force, what would have been required would be a statement from the minister explaining contemporaneously what the exigency or emergency or urgency is, what the government proposed to do about it, how that affected the pre-existing budget projections, and how the government proposed to remedy the damage, if you will, to the projected financial outlays of the government. Well, the answer is short. We want to sell. We want to sell the hotel fast. Government is prepared to consider every reasonable offer to purchase by reputable persons or entities with the skills commensurate with the undertaking. This is a major hotel complex. Its well-being, not just its survival, its well-being and ultimate profitability being matters of fundamental importance to the government. Because I've often said, and I'll say it before and I'll say it again, the Bahamas cannot be all it wishes to be unless Freeport is all that it can be. Anyone who sits there and try to pour cold water on what we did for Grand Lucaya, they cannot have the best interests, not only of Freeport and the great island of Grand Bahama, or the Bahamas, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas itself at heart. Because without question, we see in Freeport the dichotomy between proactive government and a government that turned a blind eye, whether through callousness or through the benefit of what they thought was the best advice at the time. To drive on Freeport, look to your right. You see what happens when governments turn away. A rotting hulk of a hotel. Two. One is now gone back to the jungle. The Princess Keys or whatever. Princess Towers is a rotting hulk. And I saw right in the face of Grand Bahama and its economic development. It shouts at every potential investor. This is a dying town. That's what it does. It needs to be imploded. It needs to be imploded. Okay? Quite frankly, I'd go further. Since all the insurance money was appropriated by those who own it, we need to acquire it. I ain't gonna improve no one property for them. Let the government acquire it. And let's take it down. And let's find some way. You know the contagion that spread from that hotel? The International Bazaar is now little more. Well, first of all, it is halfway destroyed. The few areas in the back that are somehow managing to cling to a level of existence, it is heartrending. That is what happened when governments turn away, turn a blind eye, and fail to act. I always take pride in the fact that I was the one person, I was chairman of F&M at that time. I said, the government, at the time, the first Perry Christie government, should nationalize or buy the property and restore it. No. Totally damaged. Totally damaged. That's okay. We didn't make your mistake. We didn't make your mistake.
Senator, you have an opportunity to bring your
and I
presentation.
advocated it. What then happened is a former Deputy Prime Minister in our party, Frank Watson, then immediately issues a statement the next day saying, he won't know what I eat for breakfast because you think I kind of crazy. Yes. And that is because all of the leading minds, so to speak, in politics in the Bahamas, former Deputy Prime Minister cussing me out, the former government of Christie, all didn't have the intellectual ability to question the quality of the advice they received. They just accepted, oh, this is the best advice, so let's do nothing. And doing nothing meant death for Freeport. Presented with the same challenges, this administration, and I commend the Prime Minister for him going out on that limb bright and early and never backing down. Never. And that's the difference. When you turn right, you look at devastation, decay, and destruction, the blighted hopes of an entire island. It's an island that in its heyday provided quality jobs for residents and descendants of every island north of Cat Island. Andros, Bimini, the Berry Islands, Eleutronians, Abaconians, yes, even Abaconians were there, working and prospering in what was once the great island of Freeport, Grand Bahama, the great city of Freeport. And with that turning away in 2004, 2005, the government of the day sealed the fate. We, on the other side of the city, presented with the same challenge, said we're not going down that road. We cannot countenance the complete annihilation of Freeport's tourism economy. And we have taken the challenge on. We made the decision. We committed the funds. And we're going to do our very best to make sure that this, our Lucayan adventure, will be a success, not only for the city of Freeport, for the island of Grand Bahama, not only for Grand Bahama, but for the entire Commonwealth. Now, getting back. All of this would have to be explained to the Fiscal Responsibility Council and the Bay View, and I say all power to them, because the same way I could stand in this camera and say that the government is resolute, we know we did what was right, we know that in what we have done will inure to the benefit of thousands of Bahamians in Grand Bahama and throughout this country. I could say that to the Bahamian people today. I'll say it to the Fiscal Responsibility Committee Council tomorrow. Whatever. In other words, those things that are done for the right can always stand the light of scrutiny. It is in this spirit that the enhanced scrutiny demanded by Bahamians, as expressed by civil society, merely giving voice to the angst of the people, the feeling of powerlessness. And this is something we all grew up with when we had very strong governments. My youth, the youth of my wife, the youth of my brother-in-law, Senator Sawyer's young adulthood, was spent on the battlefields, in the trenches, at the barricades, right down here in Rawson Square and elsewhere, fighting against powerful, immovable, unresponsive, arbitrary governance. We brought down giants in 1992. And now, the Free National Movement, having, after 1992, liberated the airwaves, laid the foundation for this whole civil society by the privatization of Batelco, which was a monopoly, freeing up and driving down the costs so that by the time as the new technologies came in, everybody had platforms on which they could rapidly embrace it and get all of the freedoms that now people enjoy. These foundations were laid when the FNM came into power, got rid of state monopolies, liberalized areas such as telecommunications, and today we take another giant step towards empowering the Bahamian people as expressed through civil society, but empowering people with information that they can make the critical judgments. How people say, oh, you know, with F&M, oh boy, you all ain't so popular now. Of course we're not. Governance is like being born. From the time you're born, you start to die. When you get elected, everybody loves you. Then you have to take decisions. And not everybody's gonna like every decision you make. Not everybody's gonna feel that they got their piece of the cake, or what they voted for, or what their expectations were. It is a part of the responsibility of government. You govern in the best interest. But they say, do as much as good as you can do, for as many as you can do it, for as long as you can do it. That's all that governments can do. And every step of the way, there's someone who will feel that they didn't get what they anticipated out of that decision. And you have, it is a law of nature and politics. The trick is to do as much as you can, for as many as you can, for as long as you can, and hopefully those who can will remember you in a fond and approving light on that day, that glorious day, when every man is a king, every woman is a king in that polling booth. But we must do what's right. And in the best interest of advancing and empowering the people. This bill is a giant leap in that direction. This bill says, I mean, can you imagine to put in a statute, Section 5, the Minister of Finance, all ministers and the chief executive officers of all public bodies, local government, government-owned or controlled companies shall be responsible for the management of public resources and public money in a manner consistent with this act. So what are the general principles of the act? The general principles of the act in section 6 sets out principles of responsible management, financial management. Fiscal is the word used. Accountability. See, and accountability means the Prime Minister, start with him, the Minister of Finance, all the rest of you the ministers, the heads of local governments, you are accountable to Parliament. Well, the Constitution and everything else says that, but now we have a bill that is re-emphasizing that. It calls a principle of intergenerational equity. You know what that means? You can't borrow till the bank wouldn't lend no more, to such an extent that your grandchildren and their children have to pay for the good living you bought with borrowed money today. I recently was blessed with a granddaughter. Oh, you know the old saying, if grandchildren are so much fun, if you do that, you'd have them first. I think you have the same feeling. But I think about that. When I read this intergenerational, that my granddaughter, and God willing, if I'm blessed with any further grandchildren, I hope to the Lord, that they will not be burdened by the errors and misspending, bad economic choices, and borrowings of this generation. That we should have the principle, which is the next thing, of responsibility in the decisions we take, because the decisions we take for future generations. And so intergenerational equity means that you should have in mind that you should not overly burden those who come behind you, those who are coming up. Give them a fair shake at good governance. Don't let them come in and meet unsustainable levels of debt, and they are themselves, as part of the tax-paying public, overly burdened with high taxes just to sustain that. You have to have responsibility. You have to have stability. So you have to make sure that, you're not borrowing yourself out of business or spending yourself to a position where you have to borrow yourself out of business. And transparency. That is the essence of this act, is to bring transparency. So, I already spoke about the first Tuesday in November. The government has to produce a fiscal strategy report. By the third Wednesday in November, the Fiscal Responsibility Council will have to have its say on that. Let's look at the council so you can understand the role that civil society is going to play in direct, day-to-day supervision of the current spending of the government. It says at section 19, the council shall consist of 5 members appointed by the Governor General on the advice, get this, of the Speaker of the House, not the Prime Minister, not the Minister of Finance, the Speaker, an independent constitutional officer. Well, he declared independence the other day and everybody agreed. I agree too. I fully agree. Absolutely. I didn't quite understand that one. Right? I didn't quite understand that one. I'm not in the habit of rushing down to give advice to Parliament on anything, and I don't think my predecessors were prone to this error, but it sounds right, so I guess it must be right, although I have no experience in it. But at the end of the day, if you call me and ask for my help or my advice, or if you need a shoulder to cry on, I'm there. But that's only as a parliamentarian, not as Attorney General. But the point is, the Speaker, an independent constitutional authority, which is what he is, will recommend to the Governor General one person from the Bar Association, nominated by the Bar Association, and notice, nominated by the Bar Association. One person nominated by the Chamber of Commerce. So the Speaker apparently is just transmitting the recommendations to the Governor General. Had I not been so imprisoned by civil society, that's a joke. I might have looked at it and say, well, maybe selected from 2 or 3 nominated by, but nope, this bill is straight. So the Speaker will have a discussion, I anticipate, should he have an issue or some information come to him that maybe the person who was nominated by this group mightn't quite fit the bill, or from his own knowledge he might have a view, he'd have a discussion with them. But right now, as the statute is written, one person will be nominated by the University of the Bahamas, one person nominated by the Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants, and one person nominated by the Certified Financial Analyst Society of the Bahamas. What I think is interesting to look at, so whether there's any back and forward discussion, collegiality between the Speaker and any of these groups, or whether they just send the name and the Speaker says, yes, okay, that's not a matter that I'm concerned about. I could only speculate. But I'll say this. What is clear from the composition of this group of professional organizations that will seed the membership of this council, what is clear is that what the intention of the legislature in framing this is to have the sharpest independent minds in financial matters, in terms of financial analysts, in accounting, bookkeeping sorts of things, so that it's people who could look at the fiscal strategy being employed, people who could look at the actual dollars and cents and count the beans and do a proper analysis on accounting principles, persons who have experience in economics, so that they could look at the broad economic thrust of the government as it would appear in the fiscal responsibility statement, and persons with some experience in business. So you get perhaps the unlettered or unprofessional, I mean without professional certification, but you get the common sense of the businessman or businesswoman. You get someone who may not have all of the letters after their name, ABBA, MBBA, LLB, and all of that stuff, but who may have been in business so long and so successfully as to be someone that could be relied upon to bring business sense to the analysis of what the government is proposing to do. And someone, of course, who can mess the whole thing up, a lawyer. Because, you know, we can get all legalistic and everything. But that was a joke, okay? Speaking as a proud member of the legal profession, I'm sure that every attorney will have the final say and wrap it all up nicely and put it out there. And so, now, the members can only hold office on the council for a period not exceeding not more than 3 years. But they may be eligible for reappointment, again, for not more than 3 years. And that essentially is the construct. Now, coming to this question of parliamentary scrutiny directly. Let me find this here. Oh, before I do that, this is a a unique feature in this bill, which did cause and does cause, I think, in politicians, even me, I'm not an elected politician, causes me consternation. The thought that once an election is called, the minister has to arrange for an independent assessment of the overall performance of the government, called a pre-election economic and fiscal update. And what information has is set out in the third schedule of the Act, the bill. And third schedule, 22, yeah. You have to say what government revenue outturn and forecast for the year in the next 3 years. What government outturn, and outturn means what's happening now. Forecast is one thing. What's happening now? You're around here talking about all these big plans and everything. Let's see what you got in the kitty now. All new spending, other than that which was budgeted for, including contracts. You know, we accuse members opposite. They accused us when they got in the last time. We accused them the time before that, and going right back, quite frankly, to 1992. To 1992, when the Ingram administration came in and talked about all these contracts that Bill and them put out in the weeks and days before the election. And how we met $50 million of invoices in a box down in a closet somewhere that caught us totally by surprise. I mean, that's way back, ancient history, but this is an old practice. And so the report is going to have to put out and lay out on the table to the general public all contracts and service projects approved, all new spending since the budget. So you can't jump slick. You can't call the election before the budget, because then you got a whole year's worth of contracted to explain in this report. You can't call it just after the budget, because any contract you issue has to be explained, okay? And publicized. And so it goes on that way. Now, there we go. When there are exceptional circumstances that require a change, and once again, this goes to if you have a Hurricane Matthew again, or if there's, as occurred in 2008, a 1,500-point drop in the stock market, major banks start going under and everything else, your tourists stop coming, or as occurred in at 9/11 in 2001, when there was a major incident, every port in the United States, every airport closed for a month till they got their security recapitulated. We were sitting here wondering whether we would be able to get our food and fuel supplies from Port Everglades, particularly our fuel supplies. Government had to make some serious changes. If that happens, the government has to prepare a fiscal adjustment plan. Provide a copy to the Fiscal Responsibility Council within 30 days, and upon that submission, the plan must be published on an official website. If Parliament, upon receiving such a plan, feels that it needs to be better explained, or they are unprepared to accept the minister's explanation or his plan, they could refer this matter to a select committee of Parliament, which means it will have the power of subpoena, it will have the power to require the attendance of the minister, any responsible officer in any area covered by this plan where they say changes have had to be made. So it will provide direct parliamentary oversight. And with that, Madam President, I say I commend this bill to you, to civil society, to our colleagues opposite, and to the Bahamian people For all its flaws, and it's not a perfect bill, it is a work in process. For all its flaws, it is a distinct advancement in transparency and accountability, and it will inure to the benefit of the Bahamian people. Thank you.
Is there a second? Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Dr. Mildred Hall Watson.
Thank you, Madam President. And as I prepared for today, my intention, of course, was to say good morning, Madam President and fellow senators. But unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, I must apologize for arriving late, as I was involved with the other part of my life responsibility in bringing another life. The disappointment I feel in not being able to make a statement to our previous gallery guest is very poignant, because having worked with young women for the last 30 years, I would have liked to be able to say something to know that with the program that Madam President set out for us this morning, that my support was 100% plus, and to share with them the support we all have for who they are and what they can become. The one comment I would like to make, however, is that as we get closer and closer to parity between men and women in the workplace, there is still grave disparity among the teenage girl. To the point where we look at our country, and I'm aware that just as recent as this year, we're still having babies born to preteens.
Oh my God.
And so there's still something wrong.
Preteens.
And that is something that we must make a bigger effort to correct. Despite the fact that we have a long-standing sexual offenses law in place, we still have many, many young women who are sexually attacked and bruised and battered, and then they become the victim. They become the one who is accused, where they are shamed. Because victim shaming is something that we see all too often. Because when we look at what just happened on an international basis, and our hearts went out to the woman who, in her 50s, is still experiencing pain from what she suffered as a teenager. She was still told she's telling a lie, and it took too long anyway, even if it is the truth. No one can determine what someone feels inside and what that type of activity will do to an individual and negatively impact them for the rest of their lives. So, fellow senators, Bahamians, please support the program that Madam President has put forth today. Let this not be something that we do for one day, because anything can become a one-day wonder. What we want is to see our girls become adult women who not only have parity in their salaries, but parity in how they are treated as a part of the female gender. I just want to say, though, that during the summer, there was held on an international basis worldwide a program called the Global Scholars organization. We had several schools from the Bahamas who represented the Bahamas, and this took place in Melbourne, Australia. And we are privileged and very proud to say that 2 schools came out of that session where there were hundreds of schools from around the world who are now going to the finals next month at Yale University. One of the schools, St. John's College, their grouping is comprised of 6 individuals, and I am so pleased to say that out of the 6, 5 are teenage girls. And so we are really proud of them. However, I think it's important that we very clearly also acknowledge the intellect of the one male who was accompanying them and his bravery for being able to do so. Now, this afternoon, my job is to second the Fiscal Responsibility Bill, which is a document that will encourage our parliamentarians and other leading civil servants and managers to express and demonstrate a sense of integrity, honesty, transparency, and respect for the law, especially when the money of the country's people is being used. A lot of what I will mention, and it won't be long, has in large part already been presented to us by our AG and leader here.
Sorry, would it be, sorry, before you,
Chair recognizes.
thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel.
Before the good senator launches into what I'm sure is going to be an incisive contribution in support, I think it would be fair not to break it, to have a start and then have lunch. So I would ask that the move a resolution that the business of the Senate be suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon, at which point you could commence, the member could commence her full statement.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate do suspend until 3 p.m. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The Senate is now suspended until 3 p.m. today.